Billionaire dumped her at the altar. What she did next shook Paris fashion to its core. Part 2. Chapter 10, Paparazzi Poison. It started with a rumor. A whisper in the night. A grainy photo posted on a now-deleted Instagram story. Isla Devereux and Lucian Gray. Together. Smiling. Close. A private dinner in Venice. A balcony. A glass of red wine in her hand. His fingers brushing her shoulder. The flash of a camera from the dark. The internet lost its mind. Lucian Gray was everything Adrian Crest wasn't. Where Adrian was composed and polished, Lucian was reckless and magnetic, a billionaire tech renegade with a scandal-laced past and a smirk that had graced the covers of both Forbes and Vanity Fair. He owned a luxury AI fashion platform that had disrupted half the traditional houses in Europe. He didn't just dress well, he rewired the entire supply chain to make luxury faster, sleeker, and more affordable to the digital elite. He was loud, irreverent, and Adrian's bitterest rival. And now, apparently, he was dating Isla Devereux. Tabloids pounced on it within hours. From runway to revenge, Isla Devereux spotted with Adrian Crest's billionaire nemesis. The fashion leak. Isla's not crying anymore, she's kissing in Venice. Daily Couture. Lucian Gray and Isla Devereux, Paris's new power couple. StyleWire. No one could confirm the relationship. Isla didn't speak. Lucian posted a blurry boomerang of two wine glasses clinking with the caption, "Reinvention tastes like Bordeaux." The message was clear, and intentionally provocative. But the truth? It was all a performance. Isla had orchestrated the entire thing. From the very beginning, Lucian had been part of her circle, not romantically, but strategically. They'd met months earlier through one of her lawyers, bonding over their mutual disdain for the hypocrisy of the fashion world. Lucian loathed Adrian. Not just because of business rivalry, but because of how Adrian had tried to publicly humiliate Lucian after the latter's AI project outperformed Crest Couture's last seasonal line. So when Isla proposed the romance, Lucian agreed without blinking. "Let's break him," he said, grinning. They staged every photo with surgical precision. The trip to Venice. The candlelit dinner. The balcony shot. The slow drip trail of sightings across Milan, Berlin, and Paris. It was bait, and the media swallowed it whole. The headlines followed Adrian like ghosts. He couldn't open his phone without seeing Isla's face, but now, it was lit by someone else's laughter. Someone else's touch. He told himself he didn't care. He told his assistant to block all entertainment media alerts. But the damage seeped in anyway, subtle, persistent. Suddenly, every meeting felt like a test. Every glance from a board member felt like pity. "Do you think she's doing it for attention?" one investor asked quietly after a quarterly review. Adrian smiled. "I think she's doing it to stay relevant." But the words tasted bitter. Because deep down, he knew. She wasn't seeking attention. She was taking control. Isla remained silent throughout the media storm. No confirmation. No denial. Just presence. She attended a gala in London wearing a shimmering silver gown with cutouts across her ribcage, Lucian on her arm, whispering something into her ear as she laughed softly for the cameras. Fashion editors gushed. Socialites scrambled to copy her hair, her walk, her lipstick shade. Think pieces were published with headlines like, "How Isla Devereux reclaimed her narrative, and dressed it in vengeance." Adrian watched from his penthouse, jaw clenched, fists curled. He had underestimated her. He had expected heartbreak, silence, disappearance. What he got instead was a woman who rewrote herself into a symbol. The final blow came via W magazine, who published a double spread titled Modern Power, Isla and Lucian. It featured carefully curated images of their supposed whirlwind romance. And at the center, a quote from Isla, the only one she'd offered since her return. "They thought they broke me. They didn't realize I was just changing shape." Chapter 11, Runway Wars. Fashion had always been competitive. But this was blood sport in couture. The press dubbed it the season of sabotage. A once-in-a-generation showdown that pitted two titans, Adrian Crest and Isla Devereux, against one another on the fiercest battlefield of all, the Paris runway. It began with a schedule shift. Crest Couture announced its long-awaited fall collection showcase for Friday at 7 p.m. A prime-time slot typically reserved for legacy giants like Dior and Saint Laurent. Adrian planned to reclaim dominance with a show so opulent, so overwhelming, that no one would dare question his reign again. But then, Isla struck. She announced her debut collection for her new fashion house, Maison Devereux, at Friday, 8 p.m. 1 hour after Adrian's show. 1 block away. She didn't reschedule. She didn't apologize. She didn't blink. The city froze. Fashion insiders were forced to choose sides. Top stylists began turning down Adrian's invites, quietly citing scheduling conflicts. Two of his most prominent muses, both models with millions of followers, pulled out of his runway at the last minute, then were later spotted attending Isla's fittings. Meanwhile, Maison Devereux rolled out the most seductive PR campaign Paris had seen in years. Cinematic teasers. Mystery mood boards. A black and gold ticket box that played music when opened. The tagline: "This is not a comeback. It's a correction." Everyone knew who it was aimed at. Inside Crest Couture, Adrian spiraled into perfectionist chaos. He doubled the lighting budget. He demanded the set be redesigned to reflect a neo-Roman, fallen empire aesthetic. He ordered a last-minute rewrite of the finale, replacing his original muse with a Russian heiress who could barely walk in heels, but who promised viral attention. His team was exhausted. Nervous. No one said it aloud, but the tension was thick enough to feel through fabric. Celeste, Isla's planted mole, reported everything. Isla read the emails with a serene smile, sipping tea in a suite above her atelier. "Let him burn money," she murmured. "It's not gold anymore." Friday, 7 p.m. The lights dimmed inside Le Palais Garnier, where Adrian's show began with thunderous orchestral music. Roman columns. Gold-threaded robes. Opulence, excess, every look screamed legacy, screamed remember who I am. But something was off. The designs, though intricate, felt heavy. Burdened. The audience clapped politely. But no one gasped. No one leaned forward. Adrian walked out for his beau with a tight smile, drenched in sweat under the spotlight. Across the city, people were already filing out to race to Isla's show. Maison Devereux debuted in a decommissioned Paris train station transformed into a temple of mirrors. The venue pulsed with soft light, intimate and electric. The show opened not with a model, but with a silhouette of Isla herself, cast in gold on a gauzy screen, whispering a single phrase. "Power is not given. It's taken." Then the models emerged. Fierce, fluid, otherworldly. Every look was a contradiction, structure wrapped in softness. Femininity turned into armor. Slit gowns with metallic shoulders. Draped silks hiding sharp corseted bodices. It was poetry and poison, a love letter and a war cry. The audience was spellbound. Phones trembled in hands. Editors scribbled breathlessly. Celebrities who had skipped Adrian's show entirely rose to their feet before the finale. By the end of the night, the press had already chosen its queen. Crest's collection was rich. Devereux's was revolutionary. Business of fashion. Adrian's empire looks backward. Isla is building the future, in heels. La mode moderne. Paris witnessed a dethroning tonight, and no one missed the coronation. Style noi. Adrian read the headlines alone. The next morning, in his penthouse, still wearing his tuxedo from the night before, the tie loosened, the bourbon untouched. Isla's photo was on every front page. She wasn't the girl he left at the altar anymore. She was the woman who had just danced on the grave of his legacy, in custom gold stilettos. Chapter 12, Backroom Betrayals. It happened in the quietest moment. Not during a gala, or a headline, or a scandal. It happened in a file. A single PDF. Hidden in a cache of older investor records, buried under layers of paperwork Celeste had quietly slipped into Isla's encrypted drive. It was supposed to be routine. Due diligence. Background on Adrian's early restructuring efforts, things she had already assumed, already guessed. But as Isla scrolled through the document, sipping an espresso at midnight in her penthouse, she froze. And the world tilted. The document was a private internal proposal, written by Adrian himself nearly a year before the wedding. It was titled in dry corporate language. Crest Couture Liquidity Proposal, Strategic Merger Framework, Isla Devereux. Her name. On a financial plan. Before he had even proposed. She read every word. Twice. It detailed projected revenue increases following their engagement announcement. It outlined branding synergy, PR momentum, influencer engagement spikes. It referenced her face, her platform, her emotional value to the brand, like she was a limited edition asset. It read like a blueprint for a hostile acquisition. Only, the target had been her. She set the laptop down with shaking fingers. There was no mention of love. No emotion. No soul. Just numbers. Percentages. ROI. And a final paragraph, circled in digital red by someone in the finance department, that said: proposed marriage expected to stabilize brand perception and secure investor confidence. Devereux's involvement significantly reduces long-term risk. Wedding required Q2 FY24 to avoid further loss. She closed her eyes. Not only had Adrian planned to use her name to save his sinking empire. He had timed their wedding to his fiscal calendar. Suddenly, all the moments that once felt real became weapons. The sunset proposal in Marrakesh, had that been genuine, or choreographed to hit the December news cycle? The candid Vogue engagement shoot, was it love, or marketing? The ring, had he even chosen it himself, or had his board? She thought of the look in his eyes that day. The tension in his jaw. The cold message he sent as she stood at the altar. I can't do this. I'm sorry. Not I don't love you. Not I made a mistake. Just silence. Guilt. Cowardice. Now she understood why. He hadn't walked away from love. He had walked away from liability. Isla didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't crumble like the girl who had once stood abandoned in a gown sewn with grief. She sat very still. And then she whispered, to no one. He thought I was an investment. A long silence followed. Then, slowly, she smiled. By morning, Isla had rewritten her playbook. She would no longer simply destabilize Adrian's house. She would buy it. Renovate it. Burn it down in front of him. And then rebuild it, into something better, cleaner, stronger, with her name etched into every beam. The game had changed. This wasn't revenge for a broken heart anymore. This was justice for the woman she used to be, the one who had walked into a wedding thinking she was a bride, not a brand. She sent a single, anonymous package to Adrian's office. Inside, a printed copy of the proposal. Every page highlighted in red. No note. No name. No threat. Just a post-it on the front, I read the plan. Now I'm writing the ending. ID. Chapter 13, Model-turned-mogul. She had once been the face of power. Now, she was its architect. When Isla Devereux entered the penthouse conference room of the Château Marceau, a luxury private members' club tucked away in Paris's 8th arrondissement, no one knew quite what to expect. The invite list had been so exclusive, so surgical in its curation, that even fashion insiders who usually knew everything about everything were left guessing. Why this location? Why only 30 people? Why, now? But when the doors opened and Isla stepped inside, there was no mistaking the shift in atmosphere. She wasn't wearing a gown. She wasn't in heels. She wore a razor-sharp black pantsuit, double-breasted, perfectly tailored, with a diamond brooch shaped like a serpent pinned at the lapel. No frills. No distractions. Just intention. At the head of the long obsidian table sat her new executive team, lawyers, brand architects, tech consultants, digital market analysts. She'd handpicked them, not for prestige, but for ruthlessness. Every one of them had once helped build someone else's empire. Now, they were building hers. Welcome, she said, her voice like silk cut with steel. Let's begin. At first, the world thought Isla would be content with designing gowns. Maybe a few fragrances. A quiet, tasteful rebrand. They were wrong. She wasn't just launching a label. She was launching a conglomerate. Maison Devereux would be more than a fashion house. It would be a multi-pronged global brand, with divisions in haute couture, ready-to-wear, luxury lifestyle collaborations, digital experiences, sustainability innovation, and most importantly, creative ownership infrastructure for up-and-coming designers. Isla wasn't interested in trends. She wanted control of the entire supply chain, from the sketchpad to the Instagram reel. From textile sourcing in Morocco to 3D printed accessories in Tokyo. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about legacy. The world gave me a spotlight, she said at that table. Now I'm building the stage. Within a week, Maison Devereux released a single teaser across all major platforms, black screen, golden text. It started with a wedding dress. Now it ends with a throne. The logo followed, a sleek monogram ID enclosed in a serpent-shaped Ouroboros. Isla Devereux, the brand. The woman. The era. Every publication covered it. Business of fashion, The Cut, Vogue, even textile. It was no longer a fashion story. It was a business revolution. Adrian Crest's PR team scrambled. Suddenly, Isla wasn't just his ex-fiancée or his former muse. She was a market threat. Investors began asking questions. Buyers hesitated. Editorials compared their two brands, and Isla's came out on top, not because of volume or pedigree, but because of vision. In backrooms and boardrooms, executives whispered the same sentence over and over. She knows what she's doing. Adrian sat in his corner office overlooking the Seine, watching Isla's launch video play on mute across multiple screens. She didn't appear in it, only her words, her logo, her message. But her presence filled the room like smoke. He had tried to own her. Now she was a brand he couldn't afford to compete with. For the first time in his career, he wasn't trying to win. He was trying not to lose. Meanwhile, in the back of her flagship design studio, Isla walked through the construction site in white sneakers and a leather trench, reviewing mood boards while her team worked around her, cutting fabrics, taking calls, sketching silhouettes. Everything was moving forward. On her terms. At her pace. She was no longer a model. She was the one making the mold. And soon, the whole world would wear it. Chapter 14, The Ultimatum. The invitation arrived by hand. No assistant. No courier. No digital trace. Just a thick black envelope embossed with gold foil, delivered by a silent driver to the front desk of Crest Couture. Inside, a single card. Smooth, matte, blank except for one line. Penthouse suite. Hotel costs. Tonight. 9 p.m. ID. Adrian Crest read it 3 times before placing it on his desk like it might detonate. He didn't need to ask who it was from. And he didn't need to guess what it was about. He knew. She knew. Now it was just a matter of how much. At exactly 9 p.m., he stepped into the private elevator at Hotel Costs, the most discreet luxury hideaway in Paris, where mistresses, monarchs, and models came to vanish behind velvet walls. The elevator rose in silence. His reflection stared back at him from mirrored panels, but he didn't recognize it. His suit was perfect, his cufflinks sharp, but there was something underneath his skin now, a tension, a weight. A fear that even he couldn't dress up. The doors opened to the penthouse. Candles. Darkness. A view of the Paris skyline like a painting hung in glass. And Isla, standing alone, back to the door, watching the city like a queen surveying her kingdom. She didn't turn as he entered. She didn't need to. Wine, she asked, finally. Her voice was calm. Controlled. Almost polite. No, thank you, Adrian said, stepping cautiously into the room. You might want it. She turned then, slowly, deliberately, and in her hands, she held a folder. Black leather. Gold trim. Thin. Deadly. He saw the crest of his company embossed on the corner. His stomach twisted. I assume you know what this is, she said, walking toward the table. She set the folder down with a soft tap, like a judge laying down a verdict. He didn't move. I found it 3 weeks ago, she continued. You remember the liquidity proposal, don't you? The one you drafted, 6 months before our engagement. Adrian's jaw tightened. I was advised. Don't, she said sharply. Don't insult me with excuses. She flipped the folder open and slid it toward him. Highlighted paragraphs. Margins filled with financial predictions. His handwriting. His plan. Marry Isla. Stabilize brand. Leverage public goodwill. Secure investment. He didn't speak. You didn't fall in love with me, she said, voice low. You acquired me. His eyes dropped to the page. I cared about you, he said eventually. You have to believe that. I don't, she said. Not anymore. He looked up. What do you want? She studied him for a moment, as if weighing not just his words, but the hollow behind them. I want you to step down as CEO. His eyes flared. You can't be serious. I own 27% of your board's loyalty, she said. You're already halfway out the door. I can make the rest happen in 3 meetings. On what grounds? Financial mismanagement. Brand degradation. Ethical conflict of interest. He stared at her. I don't want to destroy the house, Adrian, she said quietly. I just want to own it. The same way you tried to own me. She walked to the window again, her silhouette outlined against the glittering lights of Paris. You built your empire on control, she said. On image. On illusion. But the world is changing. And the thing you can't seem to grasp is, she turned to face him. I don't need to ruin you to win. I just need to be better than you. Silence. Then, gently, she slid a pen across the table. You'll receive the paperwork in the morning, she said. Voluntary resignation. You'll still have your shares. Your name. A golden parachute. She walked past him on her way out, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something rich and unfamiliar, like firewood and fig, and something ancient. She paused by the door. If you fight me, she said without turning, I'll make sure the next headline isn't about fashion. It'll be about fraud. And then she was gone. For a long time, Adrian stood alone in the room, the file untouched on the table. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Because in that moment, he finally understood something he'd never considered. Isla Devereux hadn't come to reclaim what was hers. She had come to take what had always been his. And this time, she wasn't asking. Chapter 15, Secrets in the Spotlight. It began with an announcement. A single, elegant press release emailed to every major fashion editor, investor, and publication at precisely 8 a.m. Paris time. Maison Devereux invites you to an exclusive televised salon presentation. Reclamation. A private showing. A public reckoning. The event was scheduled for Friday night. 1 hour. 1 runway. 1 voice. Live streamed globally. Syndicated across every major fashion platform. There were no other details. Just Isla's name. And the city held its breath. The venue was the Hôtel de Crillon, once a royal palace, now a 5-star fortress of discretion and decadence. But tonight, it had been transformed. The grand ballroom was stripped of chandeliers and gilded mirrors. In their place, black velvet drapes, spotlights like interrogation beams, a single mirrored runway stretching through the room like a blade. There was no music. No crowd chatter. Only silence, vibrating with tension. Front row, magazine editors, legacy designers, global influencers, live stream hosts, investors, and even minor royalty. Everyone was there. Including Adrian Crest. He hadn't been invited, but he'd made sure to show up. And Isla knew he would. The lights dimmed. No voiceover. No host. Then, slowly, a screen flickered to life at the head of the runway. It showed footage, grainy, unearthed, time-stamped. Adrian's original liquidity proposal. Isla's name. Her value to the brand. The phrase, wedding required Q2 FI24. A wave of gasps rippled across the audience. The front row shifted uncomfortably. Adrian's jaw locked. One editor dropped her phone in her lap. And then, over that document, came Isla's voice. Calm. Clear. Unapologetic. Before I show you beauty, I want to show you truth. The lights rose. And there she was, Isla herself, stepping onto the runway, dressed in a floor-length black satin gown with a neckline like armor and shoulders like a throne. She didn't walk. She owned the floor. She stopped at the center, facing the audience directly, and the cameras broadcasting her to millions. 6 months ago she began, I was left at the altar by the man who told the world he loved me. In truth, I was never his bride. I was his business strategy. No one blinked. I was a line item. A marketing campaign. A crisis solution. Her voice didn't break. But I am no longer someone else's brand. With that, the screen went dark, and the show began. The collection was titled, Reclamation. Every piece was a statement of transformation. The show started with silhouettes that resembled wedding gowns, stark white, beautiful, but bound by corsets and heavy trains. Then, look by look, the garments evolved. Dresses cut apart mid-walk by models themselves. Veils torn to reveal glittering bodysuits beneath. Trains that unhooked, dropped, and became capes. A final look, a sculpted gold pantsuit worn by Isla herself, sharp, radiant, defiant. It wasn't a runway. It was a narrative. Be not fashion, but resurrection. The live stream comments exploded. Is this a show or a revolution? She just read him to filth, and then served couture. How do I buy everything she just walked out in? Within 30 minutes, hashtags were trending worldwide. #reclamation runway. #Isla unfiltered. #bride to boss. #Devereux destroys. Adrian couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. He had come expecting dramatics. Maybe a statement. A veiled dig. He hadn't expected to be exposed. On record. On camera. He hadn't expected Isla to weaponize her pain with such elegance, to turn his betrayal into her broadcast. People were no longer whispering. They were staring. And some, including his own investors, were already standing to leave. At the end of the show, Isla walked once more to the center of the runway. This time, she looked directly into the main broadcast camera. I was never meant to be the story, she said softly. But now, I'm writing the ending. She turned. Walked off. The lights dropped. And Paris, and the world, erupted. Chapter 16, The Fall of Crest Couture. There was no explosion. No sirens. No smoke. When Crest Couture began to collapse, it happened quietly, like a palace sinking into soft sand, elegant in its architecture, deadly in its descent. But make no mistake. It was a fall. And it started the moment Isla Devereux walked off the runway at Hôtel de Crillon. By dawn, every headline in fashion, business, and entertainment media was on fire. Isla Devereux breaks silence, breaks Crest Couture in live broadcast bombshell. The business of fashion. The proposal, the betrayal, the empire. Devereux's fashion show exposes Adrian Crest's manipulation. The New York Times, style section. Bride no more, Isla's revenge collection destroys Crest's credibility in under 12 minutes. Style noi. Even Forbes chimed in, with a brutal line under the headline. You can survive a bad quarter. You don't survive becoming a meme. The Crest Couture stock, still privately held, but partially traded through associated brand groups, took a 10% nosedive within 48 hours. Key investors began demanding answers. Silent partners activated clauses Adrian hadn't read in years. 3 board members resigned. 2 major buyers cancelled their wholesale orders. His Paris showroom was picketed by activists holding signs that read, "Bride or bait. Ethics over image." Even employees, once loyal, once proud, began jumping ship. Resumes flooded luxury competitors. NDAs were quietly reviewed. The energy in the office turned from glamorous to haunted. And the worst part? Adrian couldn't fight back. Because Isla hadn't broken the law. She hadn't slandered. She hadn't lied. She had told the truth. In the days that followed, Adrian tried to regain control. He released a statement, cold, overly legal, defensive. Crest Couture stands by its commitment to artistry and transparency. Mr. Crest is disappointed by the deliberate mischaracterization of internal materials never intended for public release. It flopped hard. The public saw it for what it was, damage control soaked in arrogance. Comments flooded in. So you did write the document, you just didn't want us to see it. How do you mischaracterize marry her for fiscal Q2 stability? Did your assistant draft this or your lawyer/ex? Within days, even his allies were gone. Influencers stopped tagging Crest Couture. Stylists pulled his pieces from red carpet packages. Models ghosted his team. The name Adrian Crest no longer evoked legacy. It evoked scandal. Inside the Crest Couture offices, it was death by 1,000 emails. Sponsorship deals pulled due to brand misalignment. Fashion Week presentations postponed. Magazine covers pulled last minute and replaced by Isla Devereux herself, now gracing 3 September issues, including Vogue France. Even his signature fragrance line was dropped by a global retailer. Why? Our buyers say customers associate it with manipulation. It smells like shame now. 1 week later, Adrian stood in the executive showroom, once his domain, and stared at racks of untouched clothing. Silk, wool, hand embroidery, months of work. Pieces meant to dazzle. But now, no one wanted them. Not because they weren't beautiful, but because he had made them ugly with truth. He poured himself a scotch in the middle of the day and walked through the space like a man surveying a haunted house. For the first time in his life, he was no longer being watched with awe, but with pity. And there is nothing the fashion world hates more than a man who makes them feel second-hand embarrassment. Isla said nothing. She issued no further statements. She didn't gloat. She didn't tweet. She didn't grant interviews. She didn't have to. The silence was a crown. Her next collection sold out before it was even shown. Pre-orders tripled. Collaborations flooded in from tech platforms, design houses, and art museums. And while Adrian drowned in a sea of apology, she was already building her next empire, in quiet meetings, candlelit salons, and corner offices that once would have laughed her out the door. Once, Adrian Crest had been the man who turned models into stars. Now, he was the cautionary tale whispered at fashion schools and investor briefings. Don't build your house on borrowed image. She might take it back. Chapter 17, The Queen Takes the Throne. The boardroom was quiet when Isla entered. Not silent, just quiet in that specific, reverent way people fall silent when power enters the room. It was the same boardroom where Adrian Crest had once pitched her as a business asset. The same room where she'd been spoken of like a market strategy in stilettos. Where her name had been reduced to lines in a budget and her identity filtered through a cost-benefit lens. Now, the glass doors opened for her. And this time, no one looked away. Isla Devereux didn't dress for intimidation. She wore an ivory suit with silk lapels and no jewelry except a gold cuff wrapped around one wrist like a serpent. Minimal. Commanding. Inevitable. Her heels made no sound on the marble. She didn't need noise. Her presence filled the space like an eclipse, not dark, but all-encompassing. Half the men in the room had once ignored her. Now, they rose when she approached. Not out of courtesy. Out of habit. The Crest Couture board had been called to an emergency restructuring session. The financial bloodbath after Isla's public reveal had left the company spiraling. Adrian's silence, followed by a clumsy apology tour, had only made it worse. The investors wanted stability. The market wanted confidence. The brand wanted salvation. So they did what they had once sworn they never would. They invited Isla in. Formally. Legally. Fully. Not as a consultant. Not as a partner. But as the new creative and strategic director of Crest Couture. Majority decision. 6 votes to 2. She now held operational power. The throne was empty. And Isla walked straight to it. Adrian was already seated when she arrived, off to the side now, demoted to shareholder, still polished, still dangerous, but visibly smaller. The fall had aged him. He didn't speak at first. Didn't make a show of protest. Just watched her as one might watch a comet entering orbit, beautiful, deadly, unstoppable. When the vote passed, he leaned forward and said softly, "You got what you wanted." Isla tilted her head, not in triumph, but in precision. "I got what I earned." Then she opened her portfolio, clicked her pen, and began the meeting. Within the first hour of her leadership, Isla dissolved the PR firm Adrian had worked with for a decade. She issued a memo freezing all expansion into influencer lines. She ordered a full ethical audit of the supply chain, to begin immediately. And she renamed the next season's line, Inheritance. The room nodded. Quietly. Eagerly. Because they understood. She wasn't saving the house. She was rebuilding it in her image. By afternoon, the news had broken across every fashion outlet in the world. Isla Devereux named strategic director of Crest Couture, the brand she once helped build, and almost married into. The business of fashion. Devereux ascends, supermodel-turned-mogul officially takes control of Crest Empire. W Magazine. Bride. Boss. Billionaire. Vanity Plus. And in the accompanying photos, Isla was never smiling too wide. Just enough. Measured. Sharp. Later that evening, long after the press calls and the handshakes, Isla returned to the same office where Adrian once kept a framed photo of the two of them, laughing, pre-engagement, pre-empire, pre-crash. It was still on the shelf. She stared at it for a moment, then slowly picked it up. She didn't smash it. She placed it gently in a drawer and closed it. Because this wasn't about rage anymore. It was about returning to the same place that once tried to shrink her, and making it fit her crown. She stood at the window of the office, the city glittering beneath her, her reflection visible in the glass. She looked at herself, not the woman Adrian once needed for leverage, or the girl who cried in a $5 million dress, but the woman who now signed his checks. And with a soft, razor-edged smile, she whispered, "Long live the Queen. Because every broken heart deserves a comeback." If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional romance every week. Hit like, drop a comment, and ring the bell so you never miss a moment of betrayal, redemption, and powerful love. And don't keep the drama to yourself, share this story with someone who lives for twists just like you. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is becoming unforgettable.